a lot of these same people involved here, but there was a letter. Okay, there was a letter written.
Dark artists, huh?
Yeah. So check this one out. In 1996, so just 4 years before this report, there's a letter that was written by Richard Pearl and it was not Douglas Fife. It was Richard Pearl and Wormser, and David Wormser was the other guy who wrote it. And so two of these neoconservatives. And they wrote this letter. The letter is called A Clean Break, A New Strategy for Securing the Realm. And it's written to Benjamin Netanyahu, who in 1996 was the first year that he became prime minister. Okay. And in this, basically what this was all about is that the neoconservatives were saying, hey, here's the new strategy. Okay. And the new strategy is in the early 90s, you had these Oslo Accords, which were the what was known as the peace process.
The peace, and that was like the Oslo Accord. It was to try to get that was supposed to help with Palestine, right?
Yes. So Bill Clinton was a big deal when I was a kid. It was Bill Clinton had Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin, the leader of the PLO and the prime minister of Israel, here together to work out. We're going to do a two-state solution, and we're going to make this deal. They brought them together, shook hands. I mean, after years and years, decades of bloody fighting, this was it seemed like an amazing step forward, and Israel committed to what they call a peace process. So essentially, they committed that they're like, this land that we know is not ours, that we've been occupying since 1967, we do have to give this back to you. Like, we have to give this to you, and we have to have a two-state solution of some sense. We will do that, but there has to be a process that we go through. So, better than nothing, at least, right? So this is what started. Now, then Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister of Israel, was assassinated by a right-wing Israeli, by a Netanyahu supporter, assassinated him for betraying his own country and talking. But Israel was still on the hook for promising to eventually give the Palestinians their own state. And the clean break memo, and it's a little bit coded, but it's basically like, listen, we got to get away from that. We got to get away from this peace process. And the idea of giving the Palestinians their land, this threatens Israel's stability. Now, for years, okay?
I could see them thinking that, though, for sure.
Sure. Now, for many years, the thinking, which culminated in the Oslo Accords, right? The reason why there was this peace process is that the Yitzhak Rabin thinking was that, listen, you have the Arab world who hates Israel's guts over their treatment of the Palestinian people. And so you have to make peace with the Palestinians so that you can be friendly with the surrounding Arab world so that they don't all hate you and you can coexist and you can be prosperous, right? Now, the clean break is essentially a break from that line of thinking. And they go, no. You don't need to make peace with the Palestinians so that you can then make peace with the broader Arab world. What you need to do is overthrow the regimes in the broader Arab world that are pissed off at you, and that way you won't have to ever make peace with the Palestinians. You'll never have to give them land if we could just overthrow Saddam Hussein and then overthrow the mullahs in Iran and then overthrow Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And so they lay out this strategy, and this is the clean break, excuse me. And these are our top neoconservatives who end up in the George W. Bush administration explicitly saying that the reason they want to overthrow Saddam Hussein is because he's a problem for Israel. And when a few years later, when four-star general Wesley Clark, who, by the way, recently in a debate with my friend Scott Horton, admitted that these plans went all the way back to 96 and not just 2001, which he had said before. But this was the famous, I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but the 7 countries in 5 years. So this is Wesley Clark. You can pull up this video if you want to. It's pretty interesting and has a lot. This is when
are we really down a rabbit hole right now?
Yeah.
We are?
Well, this is when you told. This is when Rogan told you, if you want to talk about Syria, I'll take you down a rabbit hole. So here's the rabbit hole.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs.
So he's talking about the guys from PNAC.
Joint staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." Wow. He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. I said, is it classified? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, you remember that? He said, sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you.
I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
I'm not going to give you his name.
So that's essentially the part to show. But so there's